Belonging is a fundamental need and is essential to our well being, and we seek it instinctively, whether it's in communities, whether it's through shared beliefs, shared values, shared identities, and it gives us not only comfort and validation, but also a sense of home. Belonging reassures us that not only are we not alone, but also that we matter. But why is it that in our pursuit of trying to fit in and find a group of like minded people, we do so at the exclusion of others? We do so at the expense of those who are different and don't align with our ideology. Why does belonging automatically turn into exclusion and even worse, demonization of the other? Why does the search for community becomes a mechanism for exclusion, hostility, and even moral superiority? Of course, finding your tribe, your group can be great and euphoric, but the dark side of trying to fit in is into a specific group, whether it's a religious one uh, or an ideological one or a lifestyle choice, automatically makes you view those who don't share your views or your values as somehow less. It might be unconscious, but we slowly be unconscious, but we often find ourselves uh, judging those who are different, finding them less aware, less spiritual, less enlightened, not knowledgeable enough. Tell ourselves that surely if they knew better, if only they saw what we see, then they will have no other choice but to agree with us. And while finding your tribe can be deeply affirming, the entry becomes conditional, the belonging becomes conditional. Acceptance is granted only if one conforms to the ideology, the beliefs, um, and mirrors those beliefs in their behavior, sometimes to the point of even losing oneself and one's identity. At that point, difference is no longer seen as neutral, it is perceived as a threat. Makes us view those who don't share our beliefs as not only, like I mentioned, somehow lacking, but also even hostile and dangerous. In extreme forms, it can even lead some groups to try to destroy those who they view as different in order to justify their own lifestyle, in order to justify their own way of existing. It's also unfortunate that it is often those with the most extreme views on each side of the spectrum that are the loudest and make the most noises and are thus seen as representatives of their specific group. Our society has become torn apart by the constant divide and the hostility that it generates. And instead of focusing on our shared humanity, and the core of what we have in common, which is the desire to be seen, to be respected, to be acknowledged, we basically have made it into a competition of who can bash someone the most or who can criticize someone the most. And it's really sad that for a community to welcome you, it needs to push and alienate others. And often it starts with subtle messages like they don't understand us, they're not like us, um, they're not on our level. And it might seem like harmless words, but it has very devastating consequences. Because what it does is making the process of othering as normal, as the norm, and exclusion becomes natural. Compassion becomes selective and conditional and applicable only to those we deem worthy. The result is that at the end of the day, belonging becomes weaponized into division, judgment, superiority, um, and hostility. Most important question that we need to ask ourselves is why do we need to create an enemy in order to feel like we belong? Belonging shouldn't require enmity or hostility or exclusion, and a sense of community shouldn't demand from us the exclusion of others or be created at the expense of some other marginalized groups. We need to choose values and beliefs that enhance and expand our empathy instead of embracing ideologies that shrink our humanity. Because real belonging doesn't alienate, real belonging connects us all. It allows us to include those who don't think like us, and it allows us to humanize those who don't understand. It also allows us to coexist with difference. There are many reasons why belonging becomes toxic, and I think some of the most important factors are first, when our identity becomes fused with our beliefs, then any disagreement with our beliefs feels personal, and a challenge to the ideas that we hold is experienced um, as a challenge to ourselves, as a threat to our identity and sense of self-worth. Thus, any criticism will immediately create defensiveness and close mindedness instead of open dialogue. Belonging can also give us moral licensing. And what I mean by that is that um, once we believe that we are on the right side and we are the only ones to hold the truth, then we feel justified in dehumanizing others. And judgment becomes acceptable because it is framed as righteousness. Belonging also helps us deal with our fear of uncertainty because um, belonging promises clarity and simplicity in a complex world. And then questioning group norms can risk social rejection. So at the end of the day, those communities, those groups will reward conformity and punish dissent or those who disagree with them. Because social media algorithms amplify outrage, extremism, and purity tests, it's usually the loudest and voices are the most rigid ones, giving the illusion that the extremes represent the whole group and further provides um, social validation loops. Those extreme voices dominate visibility and uh, not only sharpen the hostilities but also deepen the divides. It only leads to the fracturation of society. Instead of anchoring ourselves in our shared humanity, we reduce belonging to a competition of moral dominance. The problem of other does not stay at the personal level. It escalates to the political level, becomes political violence. And history has shown us again and again what happens when belonging becomes conditional. Fascism doesn't start with violence immediately. It starts with false narratives of the insistence that some people naturally belong while others don't, that some ways of living are normal and civilized and natural while others aren't. Um, it's, and the fact that this difference is not only inconvenient but dangerous. People are used only to their race, to their ideology, to their religion, or their nationality. Very easy to control, exclude, and erase those people. Fascism always thrives on the same formula, which is defining one group as morally superior while dehumanizing the other, framing exclusion as protection, and calling violence and expulsion as necessary. And it starts with language such as they are corrupting our values, they don't belong here, they are dangerous to us. Belonging is tied to purity, whether it's racial, ideological, or cultural, then our humanity and our human rights become conditional. Communities that cannot tolerate differences um, slowly become incubators for authoritarianism and then dictatorships. And real resistance to fascism doesn't only stay at the political level and who we elect and who we vote for. It actually starts with it starts in how we define belonging and what does it mean to belong. And it's choosing beliefs that reject hierarchy as morality and uh, choosing belonging that does not require the erasure of others. Because if there's one thing that history has shown us is that every system of domination has started with the lie that some people, some groups do not belong, and thus their lives matter less. It splits people into categories of those who are deserving and are considered natural, and those who are considered illegitimate, those who need to prove their legitimacy and their right to exist. We see today when national identity is weaponized against immigrants, or when religion is used to justify exclusion or expulsion, where political dissent is framed as treated as terrorism. Now we see entire communities being deemed as a threat to society. This is how domination works. This is how domination starts. It's reducing people to labels. It's stripping them of their humanity and justifying their removal and their expulsion under the pretense of defense and protection and self interest. And the antidote to this poison seeping in our collectivity is not moral neutrality, it's actually principled humanity. And it's choosing belonging that refuses hierarchy and choosing belonging that refuses supremacy and values that don't require us dehumanizing others in order to justify our own existence and our own way of living. Every authoritarian regime starts by convincing their people that exclusion is the only way, but real belonging is actually refusing that lie, is refusing to fall for that propaganda. It allows us to include those who don't think like us, and it allows us to humanize those we don't understand, coexist together with our differences. True belonging doesn't require sameness or conformity. It does not demand of us that we make the other the enemy, and it does not collapse in the presence of differences. Our convictions don't require comparison or ranking us, and we are allowed to feel proud of our identities without feeling the need to compare us to others, to rank our beliefs against others. Important thing that we need to learn as humans is instead of seeking to prove that we are right and feel as if we're in a competition and we need to win at all cost, it's learn how to understand others instead of criticizing and judging them or trying to dismantle their beliefs. It's important that we ask questions of how they came about to their beliefs, and we don't need to agree with them, but we can hold space for both our differences and our beliefs to coexist together. We can still maintain our boundaries without dehumanizing others. Disagreements do not require contempt or condescension. And I think it's also important to view our values as a guidance instead of as weapons. Values should guide our behaviors and our decisions instead of serving as a policing of others' behaviors. It's important to remember that communities need to be able to tolerate differences, to accommodate for those differences, and to allow challenges and growth without fearing that it would collapse because it has full faith in its connection. I think it's important that we remember every time when we're tempted to judge others that real belonging does not ideological purity or moral superiority. It is the freedom to be who we are without fearing to be exiled or excluded. Real belonging at the end of the day will always connect rather than divide, and it will always humanize rather than classifying the others as less human and less deserving, because it makes room for all the differences without compromising on their own values. And because anything less is not community, is not belonging. It's simply fear mongering disguised as righteousness and moral superiority. But at the end of the day, the truth is that it is neither. Thank you so much for listening and staying until the end. If you found value in this video, please like and subscribe if you feel like doing so, and share it with whoever might want to hear it. And please stay safe. Wishing you a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. And until next time.